She's our seated judge. You actually
And
need to
then
judge.
Plan Cat Squad.
It's just
Capital C,
356
L,
is low.
A, M,
It's terrible.
C, A, T, S, 1.
It's just a minute. Because I understood it's just getting it written out. I mean, basically, I was completely.
Okay.
I should have started sooner.
Well, thank you all for coming. We are Lunchbox Studios. We are a group in CGT 411 and 450. We'd just like to thank you guys for coming to our final presentation. I'd like to extend a welcome to Jeff Hanna, who has given us some feedback on our game. He was here from Volition Incorporated. And Jeff Rollins, who is our sponsor from Purdue Exhibit Design Center. And just want to thank you guys for coming, and one and all you guys for coming to our final presentation. And we would like to now introduce our group. And we'll start off. My name is Daniel Moore. I am a senior in computer graphics technology. We'll be graduating next week. And I have an area of focus in virtual product integration, and also have a minor in management with an accounting focus.
I'm Michael Bush. I also have a focus in virtual product integration, but I'm getting a minor in computer science.
I'm Peter Altide. I'll also be graduating next week, and my focus is in game design and theory.
I'm Ray Perigo. I am also graduating next week with a focus in animation. I am getting a minor in art design.
My name is Jeremy Nelson. I am a senior in computer graphics technology. I'm also pursuing an associate's degree in organizational leadership and supervision and a minor in computer information technology. Now that we've introduced ourselves, I'd like to elaborate more on our sponsor. Our sponsor is Purdue's Exhibit Design Center, or otherwise known as the EDC. The EDC designs and builds traveling exhibits for children. The exhibits the Exhibit Design Center creates are focused on bringing cutting-edge science and technology to life for audiences of all ages. The My Plate exhibit is one such exhibit. The My Plate exhibit was sponsored by the American Dairy Association to promote healthy food choices in children through awareness of the USDA My Plate program. The USDA Max the human and Munch the dog, as you can see here, are the cartoonish main characters of the My Plate exhibit. They are heavily featured in the exhibit and in our interactive. The USDA My Plate program was introduced in 2011 to replace the food pyramid, which was considered too complex. The goal of My Plate was to create a simpler model for healthy eating. The visual representation of a plate as the basis of My Plate was designed to be intuitive and easy to understand. Now that we've talked a little bit about our product, our sponsor, I'd like to pass it off to Dan, who's going to talk about our research.
So at the beginning of the semester, Jeff Rollins, our sponsor, brought us a problem with at the Purdue Exhibit Design Center. And that problem was the EDC had perceived a need for more interaction in a part of their My Plate exhibit and desired to enhance it in such a way that health and nutrition knowledge is reinforced for the participants. Now, a key word within that problem statement is interaction. We define interaction as communication involving multiple senses where input and output is given by both the participant and the exhibit. And this was based off of a definition by D. Myers in the book The Nature of Computer Games, which states formal definitions of interactivity focus on mechanical, observable behaviors associated with stimulus-response pairs. For instance, a computer game is considered interactive if the game elicits a variety of player responses and if that game responds in kind to player input. Now the players, for our game in our case, would be children who are in pre-K through 8, who have been the majority of the population that has been involved and interacting with the My Plate exhibit in the past. Now another key word within our problem statement is the word reinforced. A study by Donko McGee which was comprised of multiple demographics of children ranging from preschool to 6th grade, found that children learn best in environments that are conducive to play. Now, the My Plate exhibit already is teaching kids about healthy food choices, so it was our goal and to increase the level of play that would help give the children a better environment to learn those healthy food choices. Now, we defined this need that was given to us by the Purdue Exhibit Design Center from research that was done by the Cole Children's Museum of Greater Chicago, where 163 Association of Children's Museum members were surveyed. And these museum professionals and curators gave feedback on what they viewed as the most important aspects of their exhibits in their children's museums. And as you can see, overwhelming responses to one of the questions, which asked about multi-sensory exhibit components. And the majority of the answers were given that they preferred exhibits that involve touching and seeing and viewing. Now, the current My Plate exhibit already has aspects of visuals with their graphics and also the text that is involved with that. And some aspects of touch as well, where kids can come up and look at boards and things like that. But we wanted to add it, they were hoping to add another level of interactivity that involved more touching for the children who will be coming to see this exhibit. So that we then asked, how do touch-based interactive games effectively reinforce learning in free choice environments? And this question then led us to our hypothesis, which says if Purdue Exhibit Design Center uses more touch interactives, then the participants' knowledge gained from the My Plate exhibit will be reinforced. Now, after we took our initial research, we then started in developing our product.
Now, when we first started this project, we had a few core features that we wanted to implement in our game. We knew where where this interactive was going to be in the exhibit. It would be in the dairy section, and thus we would have kind of a focus on calcium. We knew that we wanted to emulate a checkout lane, like in a typical grocery store. We would have food items that would come from left to right across the screen. Players would touch on the food items, and if they were calcium rich, then their score would go up. Because we had such a focus on calcium, we decided to call the game Check Out Your Calcium. Now here's Reed for some of our concepts.
So to visually develop this project, we made some concept art. This entailed storyboards to imagine the gameplay itself, different styles of the food items, and really concepts for the rest of the design of the interactive itself. To also help visualize, we created a 3D model of where the interactives will be placed in the section of the My Plate exhibit. And as you can see, the secondary screen is propped up so that it's probably going to be the first thing that everyone sees or notices in the exhibit. With our second iteration, we found some requirements from the sponsor, and one of those requirements was to use the 5 My Plate USDA standard colors, which are the primary and secondary colors, excluding yellow. Secondly, we were to use art styles which were already used in the surrounding exhibit that entailed using outlined illustrations and minimum shading and highlights. During this iteration, we also developed an introduction screen and a countdown and a milk cup animation. As the users select the food items, correct food items, the milk cup will rise up. Also, the background of the food items corresponds with the color of the My Plate group it's associated with. So as you can see, steak is blue as protein is associated with code blue. Now, after much more research, a couple more iterations, and testing, we developed this final iteration. After seeing feedback from the testing, we noticed that not many people were really noticing the instructions on the introduction screen. So we added this instructional screen to kind of force them to see it. We also added a bonus round, which will be discussed further in just a little bit. And we redesigned the secondary screen with adding the calcium content of each food as it's selected, and reinforcing great job or try again. Now, the secondary screen during the introduction and instructional screens was also added to be a bright yellow. We find that bright yellow evokes energy and joy. We found that in an article in Smashing Magazine about color theory. Later in the article, it explained that cooler yellow or lighter yellows evoke comfort, which is one of the main reasons we use the color as the main background for much of the interactive.
Okay. Once again, we'd like to state that the overall goal of this project was positive reinforcement of learning about calcium specifically, and through the calcium-rich foods that's shown throughout the exhibit. Now, unlike most games today where 2 or more players will go head-on and compete to get to the high score, we decided, and through the past experience of Jeff Rollins and the Exhibit Design Center, that this game was going to be fully cooperative. 2 players will work together to reach the overall goal. We decided this because this game is going to be placed in children's museums and 4-H fairs, where the environment is most likely going to either be in teacher-student relationships, where there's a large group of students and the teacher will want them to work and learn together, or, more importantly, parent-child pairs, where the 2 can learn and grow together. Now, according to one of our primary sources, Mediyar Nodiyafshar, author of A Multi-Sense Approach to Information Reception and Knowledge Creation and Learning, our brain is wired to use most, if not all, our primary senses in the learning process. Another one of our major contributors is Sean Gallagher, contributor to the Encyclopedia of Human-Computer Interaction, who states, "We don't simply open our eyes and look around. We are more inclined to grab things, use them, and see how they work." Because of these, we wanted to make the entire exhibit and our game specifically based around touch and visuals. Now, this full-on hands-on interaction is going to be using a multi-touch screen. Originally, players would use full LED scanners to scan in the items, much like a checkout counter, which we're trying to replicate. And the graphics would have barcodes attached to them. But due to safety issues such as the lasers and the weight of the object, we decided instead of a child being able to possibly bring harm to his or herself or others, in future iterations we will be using a lightweight, possibly plastic scanner replica that uses a stylus tip so the player will still be able to scan in objects using the stylus at the end. Now, as said before, children learn best in an environment that also encourages play. So visually, this entire interaction and the exhibit is based around a fun, lighthearted, but still learnable environment. Our actual graphics in the game, to avoid text whenever possible, we base the food items going through an approved list of foods from the Exhibit Design Center. And we base them around common items and foods that can be recognized without having to label anything. Even the yogurt item used in the game, which is still labeled just for clarity, still uses the shape and colors commonly associated with the Yoplait brand of yogurts. So even children, through our target demographic, which may not be able to read at this point, could still recognize the item and it being calcium rich. And we'll now turn to a live demo of our game.
We're just going to show a quick product demo. So, on the screen, we're projecting what's on the multi-touch table. This is just the same thing that you would see on the multi-touch screen. The laptop is being used to simulate the secondary screen off to the side. And this is going to be showing the score. This is the introduction screen. This is what would be sitting idle at the exhibit before anyone comes up and uses it. The score screen is cycling through all the foods that are in the game, showing the categories. It's just more of an attractive thing to pull you in. So you can go ahead and start. When you hit the start button, the instructions will play. This tells you how to play the game. It's going to list out all the foods and what category they're in. So as this runs through, you get a chance to familiarize yourself with what the two categories are. So once this finishes up, you'll be presented with another button to actually begin the game. The countdown will start. Now items are going to start to move from left to right across the screen. When you click on a high calcium item, you'll be rewarded with the typical scanner beeping sound for audio feedback, with a little bit of a confetti burst for visual feedback. If you were to click on a low calcium item, you get kind of a lower tone for the audio feedback, and it shakes a little bit for visual. If you scan 5 objects in a row, 5 high calcium objects in a row during the game will speed up a little bit. And then once you finish the game, you'll get this bonus round where tons of objects will spawn. You just have to hit as many as you can. Now the game ends when you reach 10 high calcium items when you scan it. You win.
Is that it? Yeah. Now to validate the effectiveness of our game and see how well it will reach our target audience, we had 2 choices. The first choice would have been to actually conduct testing with children within our target population to see if they actually do consider this a fun game, and even if they, even if learning was reinforced, we could do that through surveys or through other testing. But due to some restrictions with the Institutional Review Board and the restrictions around testing with children in schools, we went with our second option, which was to have the professional opinions through surveys of professionals who have worked with children in the children's exhibit area, and with the Purdue Exhibit Design Center. We took some professionals who are within the Agricultural Communications Department here at Purdue, and they gave us some professional feedback after playing the game. And we asked them a series of questions, the first one being, this interactive added to your understanding of the exhibit content, which, as you can see, we had all positive results with our range of answers being in, we ranked it from a rating of 6 to 1, strongly agreed being a 6, strongly disagreed being a 1, and positive range being from 6 through 4. And our second question that we asked was, this interactive was easy to use? And again, we can see that we had a majority answer with a positive response. Third question being, this interactive should be simple enough for any child in pre-K through 8 to use. And again, we received positive feedback in this question as well. Question 4, this interactive was enjoyable to use. Again, most of our participants agreed with this question, with this statement. And question 5, this interactive was consistent with the My Plate exhibit and reinforced its information. And we received all positive feedback in this statement. Now with each of our questions, we took our average responses based off of that ranking from 6 to 1 and calculated the average response for each of our questions. And the average responses we received, again, were all within that positive range of 6 through 4. And we also calculated for any possible future statistics of a confidence interval based off the results we had, and we can say with 95% confidence that they would fall within these ranges. As you can see, some of the upper and lower limits, and even the upper and lower limits fall within that positive range. So we can say with 95% confidence that based off of our target population who answered these survey questions would answer with a positive answer. So these were the best results that we could get. And based off of that, we understood that we had a positive result where professionals view this game as successful and could be effective, and the goal that we had for it to be in the Purdue Exhibit Design Center's exhibit. And now we will be talking about what's next for it and conclude.
So now that you have a better understanding of our product, you might be wondering, what's next, or what's the big idea? Well, the fact is that interactives are becoming a key part of exhibits and to teach and entertain their audience. Our game, Check Out Your Calcium, will be one such interactive for the My Plate exhibit. It will travel to various children's museums and events like the Indiana State Fair, where it will be seen by tens of thousands of children and parents. Thank you all for coming to our presentation today. We will now be accepting questions.
What was your survey number again? Like,
The survey number of people who answered, 14. However, we did get more responses, but there was some complications and problems with that data, so we had to scrap that. So,
and they were all part of the groups?
yes, agriculture. Yes.
We set up the game in a room in the agriculture department and asked for members to examine it and give us results.
Yes.
Can the game be linked together with multiple screens so that multiple children play at once, or is it just one screen at a time?
Well, this, as you saw from one of the views, that this screen will actually be on the table within the exhibit. Will lay flat, and that part of the exhibit you can stand on one side and the other, so that two kids can play one from one end, one from the other end. So it would be a max of 2. As for anything beyond that, we haven't tested anything with multiple touch screens. You could maybe get it to work with putting them together, perhaps, and get more people.
And it will work with multiple people because this is a multi-touch monitor. So, you can be, multiple people can be touching at the same time and it'll still receive input.
What's the max number of simultaneous touches that it can register?
With this screen, 2. That's just a limit based off of the screen and the operating system that we're running it on. But with higher technology now, there are ones that can run multiple ones. We've seen ones that are up to 10 at a time. So you could get more if you increase the technology with that.
Was there a score printed out at the end there? 'Cause I noticed you had a bonus round or whatever, but I might have missed like the score.
The score screen shows up on the secondary monitor. I'm sorry, it's
Okay.
kind of small, but
Okay.
you saw the picture of the milk glass in our
Right.
development pictures, and the milk glass will fill up as you get calcium-rich items.
And that was another thing with our sponsor. We viewed that we just want to add to a collaborative sense, so that we don't want it to be competitive, that I had a higher score than these people. So we opted against showing an actual score of you received this amount of number and this number, so our ranking.
During your testing, did you receive any feedback or comments about the necessity of the value of the second screen versus limiting it to one screen? Was there a really positive response to 2 screens? Do you know?
To be honest, when people came up, they saw the touch screen first, and they played through that. And most of them, they only noticed the secondary screen after they had played through the game completely. So our hopes would be that people who come up interact, maybe perhaps they're watching a kid play it while they're standing in line, then they might see the screen and notice the changing colors, because it is a very bright yellow, so
Yeah.
it's hard to miss. So.
Part of it is, this is kind of an awkward setup, but what we're planning on doing is when this is built into the exhibit, it's going to be built into, it's going to have, actual mounts, and it's going to be, that 45-degree angle, the secondary screen. So whenever you come up, you're going to be able to see this, but you'll also have that secondary screen right there, which will be a lot easier to notice than the setup we have right now.
Zoom in on that.
Yeah, I'm trying. There we go. Yes.
First, I just want to say, love your visuals. The reimplementation, the modifying, the motion, and everything. Your slide deck is awesome. The primary colors, I understand, you stipulated by the MyPlate system. What about alternate color modes for colorblind participants? Any thought given to that?
That is a very good question. and we didn't put a whole lot of research into that. So that would be something that another group could possibly research that. Yeah, in the back.
You had to summarize about your study overall, not about the participants, the K through 8 who actually participated in the interactive game, but for you, how would you summarize what you actually learned from this project?
There's a whole lot of consideration and research that needs to be put into children and how they view games and how they view learning. Us as adults, it's easy for us to evaluate, how, a lot of us would play video games, so then we would know how we would interact with it. But with a child, there's so many things with sound, color, that go into that has to be taken into account. So you really have to break it down to the very basic level to see and to validate, why you would have each little part of it. So
Something else that we learned is we had a lot of technical challenges. For instance, this is 2 separate SWIFT files that we had to figure out how to get the 2 SWIFT files to communicate with each other and update. We also had a lot of questions on how we were going to remove things and how we were going to, like if we selected a right choice over a wrong choice, how we were going to reinforce that that was a right or wrong choice. And there's a lot of research that went into that, which is something that, before I came into this, I never even realized that you had to put that much thought into it.
yes.
Brass tacks. Development time and issues trying to get Flash to work on a multi-touch device.
Actually, getting it to support the touchscreen itself didn't take all that long once we had the game created already. Flash actually made it surprisingly easy to get touch input working. Yeah. So I'd say development time overall maybe 2 weeks if you were working like full time on it. Maybe a little bit longer than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
With all of the iterations that we had to do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Flash definitely posed some of its own challenges, but surprisingly the touch component was not one of them.
Yeah. The hardest components we had with the multi-touch was just getting it to work right with us touching it with the mouse, like mouse input, and getting it to actually accept multiple inputs, which we thought was going to have to inquire like code, but it was actually just a little checkbox under properties. So it took us like 10 minutes to find that. So that was the hardest part.
Concerns with stability in Flash when this thing gets put out in the wild and is touched by a lot of people in short order?
We're not too concerned with that. I did a lot of the back-end coding. I was very careful about monitoring like memory usage and everything like that, making sure everything's getting cleaned up properly each time it runs through. But Flash is used very commonly for standalone exhibits, so we know that it's certainly stable enough for that purpose. So we're not too concerned about that.
It's standard. The EDC, a lot of the interactive that they create already done in Flash, and we've seen that they see that it works, and it works over a long period of time. So we just tried to follow that example.
Along that same lines, using the hardware, is that the actual screen you're going to use?
Yes.
Is there any history on the durability of that product?
That's going to be part of the. It's going to be part of the case, but it does happen. Exhibit screens do get broken, and that's the reason why there's always a backup. So they have a backup, and we can just easily, if something does break, the EDC has a contingency plan.
As far as I know, there would be like a sheet of glass that would be also put on top of that, so an extra layer of durability as the kids are hitting it and touching it. And that was a question of, do we go for a bigger, more expensive monitor, or something that's cheaper that could easily be replaced if need be.
First, I want to reiterate how great your presentation looks. I think the slides look fantastic, and thanks for using Prezi and not PowerPoint. I guess what I wonder is what you learned working on this project that you feel most equips you now, for those of you who are graduating here in another week or two and going out looking for jobs. What about this project you think will give you the most confidence in meeting with potential employers and then perhaps potential clients? What one or two segments of this process do you think best suited you for that?
Yeah, good question.
I think one of the most interesting things I got to do for this project was just making use of a touchscreen. I've never, like I've been around touchscreens before, like they've been around for a while, but I've never actually used one for something that I was creating. So that's probably the number one thing that I would take out of this, is just the experience of working with a touchscreen.
Yeah. And I know for myself, I did less of the back end with actually coding. A lot of more of my side was as being put as group leader was a lot of management. So the biggest thing I took out of it was just management and leadership skills and supervision of just how to work with people, because this was a semester-long project. Yes, it had a lot of ups and downs and required a lot of, like changing things on the fly and just managing a whole lot of aspects, because we had other parts of the class that we had to take care of as well, not just producing a product, but developing a paper and having research as well, and also managing just having people skills to make sure that the task is getting done. So just even that can be translated to project management or something that I found very helpful.
Oh, well, I guess for me it was just the research. I mean, it was, I guess whenever as CGT students we work on a project, we just kind of say, okay, we're going to make something and it looks good, but we don't back up why it looks good very often. Even though sometimes we try. In this, we really had to back up a lot of what we had to do. And in doing that, I feel like we ended up with a much better product. And community, that was a big learning experience.
You guys
Yeah,
have any
going with what Jeremy said, definitely all the research that I know now that it takes to develop products. I acted as the art director, so I never got to develop artwork throughout the whole game process. Did the concept art and helped work with Peter to create all the other art assets, and just overseeing like him developing his art was really beneficial for me.
Pretty much compounding on what those two said, going into games and theory, it was really fascinating and a big learning experience to just look into all the research we did, especially into how our demographic, in this case very young children, are going to react to what we think is a perfectly logical explanation. We go, okay, let's have this sound effect. Okay, why? How is that going to affect our demographic? Very simple statements can open up a lot of information and a lot of questions. And if you get to answer those questions, you can further reach your demographic and bring a whole new experience to them.
I think that's all great, but I was writing some notes down when you guys were talking, and in this order, you guys during your presentation talked about ideas, concept art, storyboards, prototypes, attention to customers' feedback, and iteration. That's outstanding from a group of college seniors. I've worked with people in the industry for 15 to 20 years that don't get that. You guys have client and customer relationships down, and you don't even realize it, and you just presented it to us in perfect order. That is an amazing takeaway from the 411 presentation.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
As a member of the committee that sat with Jeff in the development of the exhibit, I just want to tell you thank you, because as I stood and watched last year as the exhibit was in play at the state fair, it's the interactives that keep people in the exhibit, that keep them from walking by, that bring them in, so that we're actually delivering the education that we want to deliver, and it enhances their experience in the exhibit and draws them into the knowledge about Purdue Extension. So I'm just really thankful for the work that you've done and the professionalism that you've exhibited in building this.
Thank you. Yes.
Now that you're going to have to follow the IAB's testing insanity, can't you just find some brothers or sisters or neighborhood kids to test this on? I think that's the one thing, you guys are brilliant. Been doing this for 15 years, this is outstanding presentation. The one thing for me that's missing is you don't have a fourth grader to play with this.
Right.
And I think you missed that. And I think that you would be brilliant in taking their feedback and then putting that into play.
Yeah.
It's too bad you couldn't get to that.
Yeah. That's a big takeaway that we realized, I think, too late, that in developing our projects, it doesn't need to be something that we would publish, because if you take something from somebody, it has to be through the IRB standards and everything, but even just for our personal knowledge and for our personal just even feedback for developing it, that little outside feedback would have been very helpful, so that's a good point. Yeah.
What about rolling this up into a mobile web app or even a mobile application and letting people access the store from there? Because my kids would grab this out of their hands and poke it up. Absolutely.
That was actually something that Jeff brought up to us, not so much in the scope of this project, but as like a continuation. They had the idea of making it into a mobile app where you'd be able to access all of the interactives that are part of this exhibit, and possibly even have other features that you can use your phone with during the exhibit. That's definitely something that they've thought about and could easily be a legacy project.
And even something I just thought of to your question from the back. We've been in contact with one of the local high schools to try and take this to demonstrate it, and to also give kind of a rundown of the CGT program in some ways, a promo for us to give back to the program. And I just heard back actually today from the art teacher from that class, who she mentioned that she does have some children in her art classes within that demographic. So hopefully sometime next week we'll be able to take this and demonstrate it. So it's not something that it'll probably be too late for anything to go into necessarily the paper, of course, for us to present, but it would be something, if this was to be a legacy project, would give a lot of good feedback.
No.
Any other questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I figured.
Well, in your research question, you said learning. Define learning for me.
Learning would be them receiving new information, which
Receiving or retaining?
Receiving, but our goal was to help them retain the information
How
and
did you
reinforce
measure
it. We weren't able to do that because we weren't able to test on children.
No, but I mean, even on your experimental population, how did you measure learning in any way with them?
I mean, they already have the knowledge, so we asked the question of did they enforce that, so it's just their professional opinion on that.
The exhibit has, like for instance, there's going to be a graphic next to this interactive list all of the high calcium choices and all the low calcium choices. And for instance, if someone walks up and they see this graphic and they look at it, they're probably going to do a lot better at the game. But if they don't look, and so the people who we surveyed, they are aware of this, that this is the type of environment that this interactive is going to be. And what we were asking was, would this, in your opinion, reinforce that learning that's already happening from the exhibit? And we received almost, overwhelmingly positive answers on that.
So it sounds like the experiment would be people allowed to interact with that in the exhibit, and then another group not allowed to interact with it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And then you have some post-measure of possible contribution to that. How tall is it? Was it 9-year-old? Is that what you're going for?
Yeah. Well, that was something we did research and we looked into, and we're going to have to. We talked with our sponsor, and it would be we'll need to build a stool or something that they can step up to actually how tall the
Versus putting it lower and not allowing adults to interact with it.
yeah. The two options would be either take the existing table and cut it down, or to add a stool system that maybe you could have it at half of it, child can step up, and if a parent wanted to step up next to it, they won't have the stool at their feet to worry about.
And so mapping it horizontal is a client dictation, or is that something you suggest?
Client dictation.
And they also did the checkout kind of thing, or was that your team?
That was like the
bird's eye view, an aerial view.
Right.
Why?
Because you can see that the screen is on the middle of the bench, and we wanted it to be accessible from both sides. So we didn't want to tilt the perspective of the game one way or the other. We wanted it to be fair from either side of the table.
Which were you talking about?
Well, both, I mean, I'm,
Your track scene, your track screen is a side view.
Oh, well, that's like the introductory screen.
right.
Just like somebody will come up and they'll see the start button, and
So-
then that's not part of the gameplay.
I know, but why do that?
Why till this one? The
No,
second
why
one?
have that introductory
Why have an
screen,
introductory screen?
or that elevation side view, why?
That was kind of helped to visualize that it was a checkout lane, which is another perspective to show that. And that's why the background and everything was like that.
Okay, so you assume there's a cognitive transition from that child's eye view to that bird's eye view to know
Mhm.
that that's the same thing, right?
Mhm.
Did you find anything that helped you make that decision?
Besides planning, but
Doesn't having a start button on that side, doesn't having that side view screen and the start button on the screen break the paradigm of wanting to be able to make it accessible from all angles though? Because there is
yeah,
a difference in balance.
we did talk about that, but after talking with our sponsor, he said that most likely they'd be coming from one dominant side, so then just have to face that one side.
And why the music?
Just researching, just like it's lighthearted and it's energetic.
Is that lighthearted music?
Well,
I mean,
energetic
is
for
there
the
a category
kids.
where you say lighthearted music, you say, I want that one?
Yes.
So
Oh, is it?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good.
when
See, I
we
don't-
selected the music, we found audio that, in our opinion, fit the requirement, and then we ran that by our client, and
How you could do that was fine.
yes, and we had some feedback.
At least it wasn't playing the IU fight song or something.
Hopefully not.
Do you think the shaking would cause any kind of visual acuity or
Yeah,
perceptual problems for children?
yes, and that's something that would need to be researched further and looked into, because we actually had the game going faster initially, and then we had people test it, and they thought it was going too fast. And we noticed that once we slowed it down, some of that shakiness reduced.
It makes you kind of blink your eyes and like, wow.
Yeah,
I actually noticed it was worse on the projector.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Very
Yeah, the majority of the time, once we had reduced it, it was at a decent pace. This, for some reason, was,
And this was your attempt to
yeah.
like shake their head no, right? Was that the analogy you were trying to say? No, not this one.
Mhm. Well, to get, because we had originally had just the shape just stay there, and you would hear the audio that
Right.
turned.
But, there was
But nothing
no
would
real,
happen.
like feedback that you would actually.
Well, you had the incentive for the right feedback.
Right.
Right.
So we wanted a negative. We wanted something to counter that.
And you felt that it needed to be graphic to be consistent with the positive feedback.
Yes. Yes.
Versus using an audio saying, no.
No.
Or,
Yeah.
right.
You also have to consider what if they're not capable of hearing the sound at the time. What if there's tons of other.
But that gets into the color blindness issue too.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
So you talk about disabilities or
Yeah.
delays.
Mhm.
Disability.
We thought that we were going to try to reinforce both ways in as many senses as possible. And it also did, whenever we weren't doing anything on the low calcium foods, you touch it and it didn't feel like you were touching it. Like, it didn't feel like it was reacting to you. And it was kind of taking away from the interactive. So that's why we decided to add that little shake to kind of make it feel like you are touching it, but there's obviously something not right.
And probably the million-dollar question for me, and Jeff kind of answered, is it fun?
I think for us it was fun once we added the bonus round. That was really when you get
That's
that
pretty
that free for all aspect of just like,
It's
oh,
almost
just
like
gotta
that game where you have to hit those little squirrels where they're.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
The groundhogs, right?
yeah, the groundhogs, yeah,
Moles.
yeah, and just little quirks and little things that we added on with that, like the aspect of the hitting 5 in a row, the streak that added some level of enjoyment.
And I
to
think
it.
what Jeff said really helped me too, is that they would sit there and poke at it aimlessly for hours.
Right. Yeah.
My 4-year-old plays Angry Birds, she doesn't understand it. She wants to do something.
Sure.
That's all
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Pretty fun. What do you think of the contributors who slightly disagree in your data?
Some of that that shakiness and also the speed of the game
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Because
because
they thought it was too
we were,
slow or too fast?
they were thinking it was going too fast.
Okay.
Because there were, just from seeing the people play it, we were sitting there, and some of the people were like, "Oh my goodness, this is going too fast." And some of it also was we didn't have that forced intro screen, so some people would just hit the start button like, "Okay, what do I do now?"
Yeah, yeah, well, of course, that's,
Yeah, so
here we are.
so it could have been a lack of understanding, and also that some of those visuals and that detracted
In
from
your
it.
guys' research, did you find anything out about visual resolve?
Can you define it? Can you?
Oh, I can define it, yes. I'm asking if you can define it. Did you find anything though?
Not by that term. I don't know. Unless it's.
No, I do not.
Did you find anything relative to the cognitive process that occurs when you have geometric stimuli to reach recognition?
No.
Okay. Could have that been part of it? In other words, the geometry that you were showing was too small? Or
Yeah.
there were confounding variables of color overlap, you know, like the broccoli thing?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it was broccoli.
Yeah. There actually were a couple things that people commented like, I don't really understand what that is.
What that
Or
symbol
yeah. Some of them didn't recognize what the peanut butter jar was, which
Okay.
to us, we thought was pretty obvious.
Yeah, I eat
but-
peanut butter, I recognize it.
Yeah, but some people, perhaps it might have been a combination of it going too fast for them to really see it clearly to
So-
understand it.
So the variables are the color issue,
Color issue.
the variables are speed
Mm-hmm.
to recognition, the variable is geometry,
Yeah.
is it an appropriate symbol?
Yeah.
And in those areas, you feel comfortable with what you did based not on just your opinion,
Yes.
but on data you discovered, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we did receive feedback like the tofu at first was people thought it what it looked like ice cubes with chopsticks, and they're just like, I don't know what that is. So then we had to clearly say like it needs to have tofu, and it has the word tofu on it, so people can read that. So
Okay.
something to that effect.
Why would that be included in this?
Because it's high calcium.
Oh, okay. Are rocks high in calcium?
You were given a client-based approved list of foods.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's not a food, rock's not a food. Well,
Right.
If you look at a lot of the items, a lot of them are kind of items you don't necessarily associate with calcium. So
okay.
they're trying to promote items that are not associated, and so it's kind of odd, and tofu is one of them.
So is the tofu industry funding this development? Just kidding.
We'd have problems with IRB if we was funded.
That's true, that's true.
Yeah.
What made you guys decide how many things you would click on to actually finish the game? Like how long somebody would be playing the game? Like it had to do with like the lines of kids at State Fair?
Yeah, that was a primary consideration. We wanted a reasonably quick turnover, just with how many people would be there. We don't want them sitting at the game trying to get up to 50 items or something,
Yeah.
sit there for 10 minutes. So we wanted it to go pretty quick, but I guess specifically that was a pretty arbitrary number. It was just something that felt like it hit the right time.
And also just working with our client, our sponsor, just getting his opinion on what would be a good number.
Is it like a certain amount of protein you would eat in like a week?
We thought about that, but decided not to get that complex.
They have other interactives that they, especially with the MyPlay exhibit, and we kind of saw that those were going around like the 30 to 40 second to play through the entire thing, and we kind of used that as a benchmark. And also with the game, at any point, if someone starts the game and then just leaves, like say they come up, they press start, and they're like, oh, this is boring, and they walk away, there's timers that if there's no contact, it'll always go back to the start screen. So we thought about that too.
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What you think about that?
Yeah.